Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the That Was Stupid podcast. I am your host, John Seidel, and I am so excited to have you back for another episode this week. You are in for a treat. We have Megan Alexander. You have seen her on TV. She's been a reporter for Inside Edition. She has served as a sideline reporter for Thursday Night Football and has also written 2 books, a children's book as well as a book about her career called Faith in the Spotlight. So she's promoted that all over cable news, from Fox to, anywhere else you can imagine. You have seen her. And today you get to hear not just one, but several That Was Stupid moments and That Was Stupid stories. But before we get to it, I just want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by the Veritas Creative. You see that sign behind me if you are watching on YouTube or Spotify. And the Veritas Creative is a full-service digital media agency. They can help you redo your website, create video content, do Facebook ads, write books even. And they're here to help you. So please check them out at theveritascreative.com. And so now we're going to jump into the interview with Megan Alexander. I am so excited to bring this to you. Check it out. Megan Alexander, thank you so much for joining the That Was Stupid podcast, because I think what in our kind of pre-talks is you have a lot of That Was Stupid moments, and I absolutely love that. And so we're going to cover a bunch of those today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Thrilled to be here and talk about all my stupidity that has led to great things.
Right. And I think that's why I love the podcast, is I think there are more people out there, again, that have these moments that if we just talk about them, I think they inspire more people to take chances. So that's what I want to cover today. So, but before we kind of get all into that, I talked about this a little bit in the intro, but you are currently an Inside Edition reporter. So let us just kind of into behind the scenes, like what are you doing now and what does that entail?
Yeah, so I was full-time at a TV show called Inside Edition as an entertainment reporter for 8 years. And then I went part-time to work on some other creative projects, cover football, write some books. And now I just currently, I'm really seasonal, John. When they need me, I'll cover some award shows for them. A lot of the country music award shows. I covered the Super Bowl this year. And I fly up to New York maybe just once a month now. So I have 3 young kiddos that need me more, but I still keep my foot, in the water. And I'm working on another book and just trying to do a bunch of different creative projects.
And that's funny, right? Because like when I was in the media business, it was, flying once a month to New York was like, that was the norm, right? And so now you're like, oh, I've gone back, I've scaled back, and now it's just once a month.
Right. And it used to be 3 days a week, every single week. I would fly up Monday morning and come back Wednesday night. And that was my own doing. And that is totally connected to something that I thought was stupid, John. That's actually like a funny story that's connected to football.
Let's get into that. That's awesome.
It's funny because, so I was full-time at Inside Edition. Again, the 9 to 5 gig, although in TV, nothing's really 9 to 5, but it was, my official full-time gig in the industry. I'm in New York City. I'm rocking and rolling. And I think creatively, I hope some people can relate to this. I just got to a point where I thought, gosh, is this what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? And don't get me wrong, every day's different. It's interesting. It's fascinating. It can be really difficult to do because we cover the good and the bad in terms of stories and just culture in general. But I got to a moment where I thought, gosh, I would love to branch out and maybe cover sports. I love to act. I wanted to write. And so if you know Manhattan, it's a humongous city that's also teeny tiny on an island. Yeah. New York City, I think of it as the center of the universe. At least it certainly used to be pre-COVID. And it's very difficult to run into anyone that you know. That's just a joke to say that you're going to run into somebody in New York. It is a humongous town with new people every single day. So I was walking on the Upper West Side, and I literally bumped into one of my former bosses who had hired me as a reporter in San Antonio, Texas, as a morning reporter. He had been promoted at CBS. He was now a part of CBS News Path and CBS Entertainment. Incredible guy named Kurt Davis. Got to give him a shout out. I literally bumped into him and he said, well, how's it going? How you doing? How's Inside Edition? And John, our parents' generation, I really think raised us to everything's good. You always have that next job lined up before you ever quit the current one, right? I mean, that was parents.
Yep.
Organized. And so right then and there, I just blurted out to this man, Kurt Davis. I said, it's okay, but I really feel like creatively, I want to try doing some different things. I really want to cover sports. So yeah, I'm actually looking for a change. And this man looked at me, Kurt, and he was like, okay, well, so what are you thinking? I mean, do you have contractually, are you able to do that? And I was like, yeah, I actually do have some, ability coming up here in my contract, and I don't necessarily have anything lined up. And he was like, okay, well, sometimes it's good to, put the feelers out there, and good luck to you. And he kind of patted my arm and moved away. John, I went home to my apartment and I said to my husband, okay, first of all, I just ran into Kurt Davis. How cool is that in New York City to run into someone you know? But I did the stupidest thing. I told him I sort of wasn't necessarily fulfilled where I was. I didn't have anything lined up. I did have my contract coming to an end without anything lined up. And I told him I was sort of floating and wondering what the next step was. I said, that was so stupid. He's going to think I'm not organized. I'm ungrateful. And my husband's like, well, but if you don't dangle it out there, how will you know? And I was like, yeah, but no, it was really stupid. And Joel, I thought about it. I thought about it for days. I was like, wow, that was really dumb. Like, Meg, you should have your stuff together. That was too friendly. You need to stay professional, put your guard up. The whole thing that I think our parents' generation would echo in my head, right? I remember thinking, well, I will never do that again. And I need to just keep it close to the vest, right? Don't show the world your cards. Within a couple of weeks, John, it was maybe further, like a month or two.
And when was this? When did this happen?
Yeah, so this happened in, this is early 2014.
Okay.
Yeah. This man, Kurt Davis, calls me out of the blue a couple months later, and he says, hey, I've been thinking about you and what you told me. CBS just got a contract for 2 years to cover Thursday Night Football on CBS. And he said, I'm looking for an entertainment reporter to, yes, cover the game, but also to cover the fans, a little bit more of culture, the history behind stadiums, the rivalries. He's like, you mentioned that you're up for something like this. Do you want to audition for it? Do you want to come in? And I was like, yes. John, what I thought was so stupid ended up giving me the opportunity to cover Thursday Night Football for 2 seasons on CBS because I spilled the beans to Kurt on the street. I mean, that's the only way that thing worked out.
I love that, right? And we talk about in even kind of the run up to the show or how we talk about the show is that, the people who are saying that was stupid could be those around you, but it could also be yourself, right? And so that's what I love about what you're talking about. So what did that do for you personally? What were some of the fears that you had in doing that? I mean, you covered them a little bit, but what are some of the insecurities? Is it like you talked about our parents' generation? Is it like, I'm supposed to not show that I have any cracks, or what was kind of going on in your mind that led you to say to yourself that was stupid?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's just that you have to have it all figured out in life. You have to have it all together. You have to be organized. You have to present well. You shouldn't share too many doubts or even just dreams with people if they're not completely organized and already laid out in a master plan. He was somebody who, he's an executive at the company, so I felt like I needed to make a very good impression. I think all that goes through your head. And then once I got the job covering Thursday Night Football, I did need to go back to my boss at Inside Edition and say, hey, are you okay with this? Because I was part-time at Inside Edition, give him the respect and of saying, hey, would you be okay if I take on this gig as well? I always tell people, I never burn any bridges, right? If at all possible. Like, I wanted my boss to feel good about it at Inside Edition. And he was okay with it too. But that was scary to approach him because he might go, oh, she's unhappy. And then he might fire me from Inside Edition in a little bit. So it was a lot of like maneuvering. But I tell young people, especially John and anybody, I say, share your dreams. Share what you want to do and where you want to go. Because if you don't, my husband was right. How will they ever know? And number two, I really do think I did it in a way of we're all on the same team. How could this work out for everybody? And then, Inside Edition got to cover some of the games. There was some cross promotion there because it was all in the same family. I tell people we got to take the risk, right?
Yeah.
Of looking maybe silly, because if you don't, how on earth would anybody ever know? And I think also that connection of sharing those things with him is so different than just emailing a resume and just being a name on a piece of paper, right? Anytime we can make a personal connection and be vulnerable and share a little bit more of our heart, that has worked for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my advice to people. Share your dreams. Talk about it.
I love that. And so that's kind of the first that was stupid moment you've had, and we're not necessarily going all chronological here, but you have several other ones. And I think the other one or the next one I want to cover is you and I were maybe a year ago, we were filming something together, and you kind of shared with me, you had mentioned your love of acting, right? And so you do acting. People have seen you on, especially around Christmas time. You have a special show. Maybe just talk about that for a second. The special show you have around Christmas time.
Yeah, so I have a holiday travel show called Small Town Christmas, which airs on Up TV. And yes, I've been in a couple of movies. Lifetime had a movie called Christmas in Tune with Reba McEntire. I play her publicist. We're working on a screenplay right now for another film. Love to dabble in that world. Upbeat, family-friendly entertainment.
Yeah. And so I bring that up and want you to talk about it because it's like you are in that business. Like, you are, not only have you covered it as a reporter, but you've lived it as someone who's been on the other side of the camera as well. And I remember you sharing with me this story of there was maybe a role that you were being considered for, and there was kind of a conversation with your agent or maybe the director, and you can kind of fill in the blanks there, but where you kind of really took a stand for your values, and that was really inspiring to me. And I think a lot of people would say, well, that was stupid, right? Like, you had the opportunity to have a role that you kind of turned down. So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to that concept of thinking, oh my gosh, is this as good as it gets? Do we need to just be grateful for where we are? I had an agent in New York at a good agency that was sending me out on auditions, and I was getting, good little parts to audition for. And he called me up and he said, there's a show that's on in the evening. It's a drama. You would all know it. This was a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, very popular drama crime show in the evening. And he said, there's a small role that I think you'd be great for. I'm going to send you the script. I said, sounds good. He sent me the script. And John, normally for these small parts, when you're, Matthew McConaughey, you get the whole script, right? Or Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie. But if you have a teeny tiny part, they usually just send you your pages.
Which they don't want it to leak, right?
They don't want it to leak, and it's none of your business. So they send you your small little part, which for me is usually like 2 to 3 pages, maybe more if there's a couple scenes. But it was one scene, and I got the 2 pages, and that was it. And then usually it's a bit of a leap of faith that you just audition for it and it goes into the show. But this particular part, they had sent the page prior. So I got a peek at the scene prior to my role in the show. And my part was self-explanatory. It was simple. I could totally do it. The page prior was a really, really rough, dark scene that I would never want to be a part of, just personally. And everybody's different in terms of what roles you want to take on. And you have to decide for yourself, what you will and won't do. But for me personally, I was like, oof, that's rough. And I always thought, gosh, I want my parents to be able to watch the shows that I'm in. I want to, feel good about, the productions that I'm a part of. And so I read that scene and I was like, oof, that's going to be a hard turn to my scene right before it. And so I said to the agent, I said, hey, I don't think this is for me. And he was like, what are you talking about? This is such a great role for you. This is a huge show. This is a moment. And I said, yeah, but I'm just, I'm not, feeling the vibe of the whole show, like that scene right before. And he really barked back at me. He was like, that's silly. You should be doing this part. This is a moment for you to get your foot in the door. Are you sure you can't do this? And I took a deep breath and I just said, no, I really can't.
Wow.
And John, I never heard from him again. So I thought. So that was a moment where I thought, okay, that was really stupid. I just lost a really good agent in New York. that was just one role. I could have separated it. I'm in my head going, that was really dumb. That was really stupid.
And he's saying the same thing to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's saying the same thing to me, like, come on, just do this. Well, I also knew, though, that was the right decision. I mean, I had that peace in my soul. I did have that peace where I was like, no, this was the right thing to do. I'm bummed to lose the agent. I'm bummed to lose the opportunity to be in that show. But that was right to say no to that particular scene. Well, the funny thing, John, is I ended up getting matched up with a better agent that was just a better fit for me and the types of roles that I wanted to take on. And I don't think that door would have opened and I would have began that journey towards her if I hadn't said no to him, right? Again, the scary thing of cutting the rope and being able to move on. And then what's ironic is that agent actually called me years later with another audition and did resurface. I guess he cooled off for a couple years and came back around. So, that's another thing that I tell young people. I'm like, go with your gut. It's, your decisions could last forever. That material that you choose, that content you put out there could last forever. And I'm so grateful. I'm not saying that I didn't, think about it a lot and get inside my head about it, but I'm so grateful that I just made that choice.
What are some of the things that go through your head? I mean, let's back up. I mean, we know that it turned out well for you, right? I mean, that's the whole premise of this show, but what are the kind of things that you have to come to grips with in your mind when you make a decision like that? I mean, in your mind, are you thinking, I may never get another role, and I have to be okay with that? Like, what are some of the decisions and the things that you have to be okay with in your head?
Yeah. Well, looking back, I realized in all the acting and industry classes that I had ever taken, we had never discussed ethical dilemmas. We discussed the techniques of acting, where the camera is, lighting, pacing, all of it. But we had never once in my college classes and my youth groups discussed, what do you do if you're up for a role that you don't feel comfortable about and you need to say no? And you need to say no to a director or a producer. Had never talked about that. Since then, I've been in some classes where that has come up, and I'm grateful for that. But I had none of that going into this part. So I think it's really important to write down your black and whites. And since that moment, John, it became clearer to me what my line was, what I would and wouldn't do, because I had created a line by saying no to that part. And I thought, okay, yes, what else would I say no to? What am I okay with, right? And every actor and everybody in their industry, in whatever job, you have to determine that for yourself. But that's something I think that we can talk about is think of it ahead of time. What are your black and whites? Where would you compromise and where would you not? So I just stumbled into it because of that situation, but I think it's important to talk about it beforehand.
What went into you kind of determining those black and whites?
Yeah, well, again, for me, a big sense of it was, can my family watch it? Will I be proud of it if friends and family see it? Is it something that I think, even a dark scene or a movie that wrestles with good and evil, if there's a redemptive arc, right? Because obviously the world is messy, the Bible is messy, life is messy. There's a whole battle of good and evil. But if there's a redemptive arc of hope in the end, of pointing towards hope, towards goodness, that is for me how I determine whether or not, to do it. But again, that particular scene was just dark. And to my knowledge, there was nothing redemptive. So that's something that I try to think about is what's the big picture here in the story that's trying to be told. And now as a mother of 3 little kids, I think about if they were in my shoes, how would I advise them? How would I guide them to that decision? So, and then you go back to your Bible and you comb through your Bible and you're thinking, okay, what does the Bible say about this? In terms of, being salt and light on this earth and encouraging others and, not causing your brother to stumble, those types of things.
And we're going to talk about your faith in a second here, because I think that's another, in a sense, that was stupid moment. But it's funny you mentioned that about the redemptive aspect, because there are some really popular shows that my wife and I had started watching over the last year, 2 years, that we stopped watching. And one of the main things that we said, the quotes that came out of our mouth were, there's just not a redemptive aspect to these characters or to this storyline, right? Like, you're like, okay, it kind of hooks you with maybe, some of the storylines in the show. And you're like, okay, we've held on for a season or 2 seasons. and we are just like not seeing any redemptive aspect. And why would we just want to fill our minds with that? And I'm not trying to sound like a TV show teetotaler, right? But there's, especially when you become a parent, I think that is something that is very, very important. So I love that you pointed that out. And so kind of to the third That Was Stupid story, though, you've written a couple books, but your first one was called Faith in the Spotlight, right? And so and this was written during your time, especially in the height of your covering Hollywood. And I would just love to talk about what went into the decision to write that book. I mean, you're someone who's in Hollywood, you're covering, some people would say, oh my gosh, whatever Selena Gomez is wearing on the red carpet, right? And now you have Megan writing this book about faith. That seems kind of stupid, right? But talk about the decision to write that book and especially what motivated you to do that.
Yeah, I know. John, I joke with people, oh, my English professor in college would be so proud of me, analyzing when Justin Bieber stubs his toe. We are there to cover it for you. Life is full of lighthearted moments, funny things, and then, yes, serious, difficult, stories as well. And I we got to be able to laugh sometimes. We got to have, entertainment and enjoyment. And what's funny, John? The fashion stories that we do on Inside Edition get huge ratings. So my guess is your wife is interested in what they're wearing on the red carpet.
Absolutely.
I'm like, if y'all don't like it, change the channel. But most people like some of those rather silly, what is Selena Gomez wearing stories. But I hear you. For me, as a believer, I was raised in a Christian home in Seattle, Washington, accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior at age 5, never really strayed. I pretty much have stuck with him my whole life. Thank you, Lord. And, but I will say, early on, I wanted to be in entertainment. I just wanted to create, produce. I love the camaraderie of putting on a show. I'm that person that was singing in the church choir and auditioning for the school play. But being raised in a Christian community, I didn't always get the encouragement. But as I'm growing in my faith, people are saying to me, oh, entertainment, that's Satan's playground. Why do you want to be involved in Hollywood? But I'm reading my Bible and I'm going, wait a minute. The Bible is full of stories of people that went to very dark places of influence and shined their light. Think of Moses, think of Daniel, think of Esther. I was like, wait a minute. God uses people anywhere and everywhere. And why not in the entertainment industry too, especially with the power of telling stories? I mean, the Bible is full of so many compelling stories. Jesus told stories, his parables. So I really had a moment in high school, my junior year. We're all getting ready for prom. We're clicking those photos. And when it was my turn to talk about what I wanted to be when I grew up and where I wanted to go to college, my friend Nathan's father, he's a pastor, the Reverend Shields, I kind of looked at him and I went, I think I want to work in entertainment. I know it's not a pastor. I know it's not a doctor or a missionary. I think I want to work in entertainment. John prepared for the blowback that I usually got. And the Reverend Shields said to me, Megan, every person is a minister. Every industry is a ministry.
Wow.
Good for you. And that was the moment for me where I thought, okay, I needed that encouragement. Words are powerful, right? So things that we say to people really matter. And I continued on this path. And so the book, Faith in the Spotlight, is really my story of, I believe God can use all of us anywhere, any place. We need believers in all parts of the industry, all areas of the world to shine our light. And, for some of us, it's not going to be super, complicated or high level, or even where you feel that you're doing something amazingly influential or important. Like for me, sometimes it was just saying no to a part, defining who I am, saying no to a dress once that I was told to wear on the red carpet, and I just didn't think it reflected my values. And so I said no. It's full of like those types of stories where I just want to empower people to look at their job and their life and their community. And hey, how can I shine my light just a little bit brighter in this world as a believer? I think we need that conversation in all industries. And I think in the past, the church didn't always support me in that area. I since have learned of a lot of wonderful organizations, and I think the conversation is out there more and more now. But at the time that I wrote this book, which was 8 years ago, the conversation was needed. And so I'm happy to have it, encourage those young people, because I tell them we need you in this industry. And now it's really tech, John, right? We need Christians in technology. wrestling with those ethical decisions and saying, hey, who should we be as believers and what should we do?
I love how you said that earlier, right? I remember counseling a lot of, with my mental health background in the book that I wrote, counseling a lot of pastors during COVID who said there's no seminary class on global pandemics, right? Like how do we lead people? And so I loved how you said that and you reiterated it here. Like there's not a lot of classes on those ethical dilemmas, right? And so I think you are one of the leading voices and conversationalists on some of those dilemmas, like know where you stand here, and I would love to actually hear more about what was the dress story.
Oh, yeah. So the dress story was, speaking of fashion, we cover the award shows, Oscars, Grammys, Golden Globes, Country Music Awards. And, a big story that a lot of the entertainment shows do is the the morning after the show, it's who won what. And then 2 days after, it's who wore what, right? What was the big moment on the red carpet in terms of fashion? And early on at Inside Edition, this was maybe 10 years ago, a very popular celebrity, we all know her, walked the red carpet in a extremely revealing white dress. Good for her, like showed everything, left nothing to the imagination. And one of the stories that I was assigned to early on the show was we would say, for example, it wasn't Angelina Jolie, but if, for example, Angelina Jolie walked the red carpet in this $10,000 Christian Dior dress, we found one that looks just like it for $50, and you can dress like the winners at a fraction of the price. John, people eat this stuff up. They love it.
Yeah.
Right? So this celebrity had walked the red carpet in a white dress, and the next morning I went into the studio and there was a white dress hanging up in the makeup room, and I was told I was going to wear the replica. So, hers cost thousands of dollars. This one was just like $100, and they were going to put it on me, and it was the same style. It was totally revealing, and my heart just sank, and I thought, I cannot wear that dress. Like that is nothing I would ever choose, but like my family would be horrified they saw me in that dress. And the stylist pushed back and said, no, this is what you're wearing. We've got to go. We got to turn this story in a couple of hours. Let's get going. You know the routine. And I had a moment where I thought, what am I going to do? And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't wear that dress. John, I could be fired, right? I mean, you think about, that's my assignment. That's what I'm supposed to do. I said, I can't do that. And then I tried to problem solve in the moment. And I tell people, try to give them an option. So you don't just leave everyone hanging, because I appreciate the fact that that stylist had a job to do. The writer had a job to do. My show is producing content. We're under deadline. There's a lot of people involved here. So I said, I won't wear that one, but can I wear that one instead? There was another celebrity had worn a black dress that I felt much more comfortable in. I know I can pull that off. Put that model in that one. I'll do that one. Can we just see if this would work? And they let us go into the bathroom and quickly figure it out, and it worked out. So if you're going to, toe the line and say no, also try to provide an option, which I think is just helpful and considerate with the fact that, in businesses, there's a lot of people involved, and you respect that a lot of people are getting their paycheck too. So
I know I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think one of the things that is really coming through in this episode of the show is the bravery that is required. And I'm not trying to just throw honey on your head and whatnot, but I think the bravery that is required to take a stand for what you believe in, right? And in those that was stupid moments, right? And so we've covered businessmen and other people who have made decisions, but I think what really comes through in your story so far is you just said it. You're like, I could be fired, right? And so where does the peace come from to be able to say in a split second, right? Because you don't have it's not like you can be like, hey, I'm going to go home. I'm going to think about this. Where does that bravery come from in the split second to say, yeah, I may be fired for this, but I know it's the right decision?
John, that's another really good point. Growing up in the church and in a Christian community, you're told, go talk to your pastor, go talk to your small group, think about it, pray about it for 24 to 48 hours. I just didn't always get those options, especially in a fast-paced environment like entertainment. You're right. It's like a split-second decision oftentimes, especially to make deadline and the way things are. And nowadays with, how quickly stories get out on our phones, it's just instant. So again, it's knowing who you are going into the situation. But in that moment, for me, I just took a deep breath and I just said, Lord, help me. It was just a simple little prayer, like, Lord, help me. What am I supposed to do here? Going right to the Lord and knowing that he's right there with you. He saw the whole situation play out. He's aware of everything that's going on. And then for me, it's, okay, at the end of the day, when I lay my head down on my pillow at night, am I going to feel good about the day? Am I going to feel good about the decision I made, right? I mean, ultimately in the Bible, it says we're all going to be held to account for our decisions, right? When we enter the pearly gates. And one of the greatest songs that I think shares that message is Toby Mac's Lose My Soul, right? I don't want to gain the whole world, but lose my soul. It's weighing it. Okay. Am I going to feel good about this decision with what really matters in life? And if I'm performing for an audience of one, ultimately, which is the Lord, not all this, what is going to give me a peace in my soul? And I respect that is a weighty topic, John. I mean, there are attorneys that are asked to represent clients, sometimes that maybe they don't feel great about. I mean, doctors performing on people, to save our lives. I mean, teachers nowadays in terms of their environment and what they're asked to do. I mean, it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
and every person has to figure it out for themselves. And I fully respect that for some people, they're just trying to pay the bills and they don't want to lose that job. So I think just praying about it, really trying to say, okay, at the end of the day, how am I going to feel about this? And realizing also that I really do believe God's got us. When we make a decision that honors him, that puts him first, the Bible tells us that he promises us that he's got us, right? It tells us that in Matthew, that, don't worry about the birds, right? They don't have any concerns. They know what they're going to eat and who's going to take care of them. In the same way, God has got us and he will take care of us.
And so I love that your story, and I know it as a friend, is you've continued to have these great opportunities despite saying no to some of these other things, right? I mean, you were the voice for the U.S. Women's National Team in the She Believes Cup, right? You've got to announce them, and so these opportunities keep popping up, and I just love to hear, that it's come after you saying no or standing up for what you believe in. There was one other story that you mentioned right before we came on the show, going back to your pageant days. I'd love for you to share that was stupid moment.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I would say anytime that I've held true to my values and made a decision that I feel really good about, God has absolutely taken care of me. And so I would just encourage people, God's got you. And there's also so many great opportunities nowadays, John. I feel like for believers, with movies, fundraising opportunities, content, television shows, books. So it's neat to see there is a community out there that you can tap into. And yes, the first real moment where I thought that was so stupid and just kind of kicked myself was I was in a pageant when I was 13 years old. I was an athlete growing up. Yes, I love performing and stuff, but I did not do pageants until I was 13. And my mom got this flyer in the mail about the Miss Washington preteen pageant. And she said, hey, is this something you'd want to do? And, this is before The Voice and American Idol, when, your local pageant really was an opportunity to like get your foot in the door of entertainment, with the talent contest and everything. And so I did it, and I did it for a couple of years. And my final year as a preteen contestant, I went into the interview competition, and I just really was enjoying the experience, enjoying being around like-minded girls that are ambitious and have goals for their life. That was really fun for me to be in that environment. But I went into the interview competition, which was the most important. And I went around the room, and I thought I was too relaxed in the interview. It gets back to that whole thing, John, of like, you got to, have it all together and be super professional. And I just felt I was too casual in the interview. And I left and went back to my hotel room, and my mom said, how did it go? And I remember I threw myself down on the bed and I said, it's over. I don't think I did well at all. I was too casual. I don't feel like I took it seriously, and I was kicking myself because it meant so much to me. And my mom was like, well, you never know, honey. I'm sure you did good. That night, John, I was crowned Miss Washington preteen, and I was told by the judges that they loved how natural I was in interview. So, people, you just never know, right? I mean, be yourself. And those times when we think that was so stupid could end up being exactly what they were looking for. So,
Well, and what I love about that, right, going like full circle all the way back to the first That Was Stupid moment, where you're talking with the CBS exec, that was it, right? Like, you were being open and vulnerable, and like, I'm not going to put on a front. I'm just going to tell you that, things are okay. I'm kind of looking for something else, right? And so I love that message started back in your preteen, pageant days and carried through your entire life. And that kind of brings me to one of our final questions, which would be, when you look back at these moments, when you look back at your life, what do you feel like is the lesson or lessons of your That Was Stupid moments?
yeah, gosh, I think ultimately stay true to yourself, right? Stay true to yourself. God created you uniquely for a purpose. You have a unique skill set that nobody else has, especially for young people. Comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it? When we compare ourselves to other people and think we need to be a certain way, I think you're right. The theme really has been be yourself and listen to your gut and your soul, whether that's for how you should share and maybe if you should be a little more vulnerable, or if your soul is telling you to say no to something. Listen to your gut and your soul. And obviously the foundation of, being a believer and having that as a foundation in my life has been really helpful to, go up against and say, okay, how does my faith align with this? But yeah, be yourself. Something that you think is silly or stupid may be exactly what they are looking for. And I think that has been reflected in some major moments in my life and some major jobs that I've gotten.
We've covered this a little bit, but you guys kind of summing it up there leads me to this question, which is, have you found it hard to be a person of faith you've lived in New York, we've shared that experience of living in New York. Have you found it hard to be a person of faith in New York, in Hollywood, in your industry?
Yes and no. I think ultimately, it's how we treat people. I mean, relationships are really important, and building relationships and trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand where they're coming from. I sometimes think, John, the best thing we can do as believers is listen and just know where people are coming from instead of preaching at them. Just develop those relationships. I am incredibly grateful for the friends and the network that I have for people of all different backgrounds in this industry. I mean, I have gotten opportunities from bosses and people in positions of authority who aren't believers, who gave me opportunities and were fine with the fact that I just had a certain value system and faith system. And I think it's really just treating people with respect, listening to their story, and yet at the right moment, holding true to who you are and having, that moment where you go, okay, that works for them, but that's not going to work for me. And that's okay, because I feel good about myself and the decision I made, feel good about, what the Lord would think about this. So my answer is yes and no. Certainly there have been times when you feel a little bit lonely. Maybe you won't even get those auditions once they find out you're a believer or something, or you'll be, not invited to some parties and so forth. But maybe that's God protecting you, because I've met so many other wonderful people because folks know I'm a believer and other doors have opened. So I think it's the way that we approach it, I just think there's a really neat opportunity right now to be involved in a lot of really cool projects in our industry for believers. And so just find your people, take your time to find your people, perfect your skill set, hone your craft. And let's end on this, John. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from an acting teacher who was a believer, Steve Flanagan. He's amazing. But he told me two things that have stuck with me forever. He said, number one, no matter what, every time you audition, every time you interview for a job, every time you try something new, reward yourself. He said it can be go get an ice cream cone, say I'm going to watch my favorite show tonight. He said reward yourself, because there is so much rejection in this industry that he's like, just the act of doing it. Let's focus on that instead of if we get the part. So I would say reward yourself no matter what in life. That's hugely important. And the second thing that he said was, if you ever feel lonely or left out, maybe you haven't been invited to a party, haven't been invited to audition for something, use that moment right there to perfect your talent. Read a book, practice reading lines with somebody, enroll in a class. Like maybe you getting that no from someone opened up time for you to just work on something that you need to and practice. So I love that. That changes your whole mindset. Instead of, when you're left at home on a Friday night, great, we have a whole night to work on something or watch my favorite show. So it goes back to that whole mindset thing. And that was Steve Flanagan. Thank you, Steve.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the whole reason that I've had the idea for this podcast for, I think, probably 2 years, right? And, everything was just so busy, and, wanting to put out content every week and being faithful to that. And you know how this is. I mean, sometimes you're doing 3 interviews in a day, right? Because that's when people are available. And it wasn't until I actually lost a client in my work that freed up the time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to use that time to pursue something I've been wanting to do for 2 years. And that has led to this great conversation that we're having now. And I think the incredible advice. So thank you. I resonate with that on a very personal level. So I appreciate that. Where can people go to find out what you're doing, whether it's the next season of Small Town Christmas? I think is that the right name? Did I get that right? Yeah. Small Town Christmas on Up, or whatever you are doing. Where can they go to find out more about what's coming up in the world of Megan Alexander?
Oh, thank you, John. Well, meganalexander.com, my website. I'm on social media too, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And I've got another book coming out fall of 2024.
Ooh, can you give us a little preview?
It's going to be Christmas themed. That's all I can say. You know me, I love my Christmas.
Well, I love Christmas too, right? If my wife let me leave the Christmas tree up all year round, I would. And so I finally got her that we can decorate for Christmas on November 1st.
Yeah,
it's a good compromise.
Yeah. And I really just love encouraging people too, John. I mean, I'm flying to Dallas tomorrow to talk to a group about what you and I just discussed, which is, encouraging young people that want to succeed in life and not compromise their faith and values. So I'd love to speak to a group out there as a, female believer in this industry. If there's ever an opportunity, that's a big blessing in life, is to network and encourage believers.
Well, Megan, thank you so much for sharing not just your one that was stupid moment and that was stupid story, but all of them, right? And I love that, because I think it's, as you, I think, perfectly summed up towards the end, there's kind of been this consistent theme of being grounded in who you are, you as a person of faith, being grounded in your faith, having those conversations with yourself ahead of time so that when those things come up, right, that you're not caught off guard, that you can make that quick snap decision, and then being comfortable with the risks, right? I continue to love that. In those moments, you're like, hey, listen, maybe I will lose my job, and that's okay, right? I have to be okay with that, and look what it has led to. So, Megan, thank you so much for joining the That Was Stupid podcast.
Thank you, John. Wonderful conversation. Appreciate you.
I really hope that was encouraging to you. I love not just Megan's story, but her stories. And I think especially if you are the parent, the mom, the dad, the grandparent of a young girl, I would encourage you to set Megan up as an example for that little girl, because I think what she is doing is so awesome and so important. The message that she is giving our kids, as well as those who are trying to make it in Hollywood, trying to make it in media, trying to make it in entertainment, that you can stick to your values, you can stick to who you are, and you can still find success. And so I just love that aspect of Megan's story. Hey, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. Please share it. I would love to spread the message. And if you have any ideas, suggestions, you can email me as well. Would love to hear from you. You can email guest@thatwasstupid.show, guest@thatwasstupid.show. All right, we'll see you back here next time. Can't wait.